My name is Lorraine Monroe, and if you're hearing this, I guess I finally got brave enough to tell the whole story out loud. Instead of just replaying it in my head at 3 in the morning. I'm 76 years old. My knees pop when I stand up. My hands shake when I pour tea, and I forget names more than I'd like to admit. But there's one thing I remember with crystal clarity. The exact moment my own child stopped seeing me as a mother and started seeing me as a utility, a wallet, a body she could tuck away when I no longer fit the picture. I wasn't always this soft around the edges. I used to be quick. Numbers, especially. Bills, mortgages, interest rates. I could juggle them in my head while frying chicken and helping with spelling homework. Samuel, my husband, Lord, I still say his name like he might answer. He used to call me his human calculator. He'd come home from the job site with sawdust in his hair, clothes smelling like pine and sweat, drop a crumpled stack of checks and receipts on the table, and say, "Lo, baby, tell me if we can breathe this month." And I would. I always did. Somehow, we found a way. We bought that little brick house on the south side with nothing but stubbornness and overtime. Brown shutters, 2 bedrooms, a patch of yard. Samuel turned into a jungle of tomatoes, collards, and roses. That house held everything. Our first Christmas tree, fights that felt like the end of the world, makeups that tasted like hot cocoa and apologies. And, of course, our Sabrina, my late-in-life miracle. She came after a miscarriage and 3 years of trying. When they put her in my arms, scrawny and loud, I swore I'd never let the world hurt her. I didn't know she'd be the one to swing the sharpest knife. She was a whip-smart little thing, always painting something, rearranging her room, making little stores out of shoeboxes and old jewelry. "I'm gonna have my own brand one day, Mama," she'd say. Sticking glitter stickers on everything that didn't run away fast enough. "People gonna line up for my stuff." I'd just laugh and kiss her forehead. "I believe you," I'd tell her. And I did, with my whole chest. Life went how life goes. There were layoffs, sickness, a busted transmission that nearly broke us. A scare with Samuel's heart that turned into years of medication and quiet walks and cutting back on salt. There was joy too. Sabrina's honor rolls, prom dress fittings. The way her eyes shone when she got into that fancy design program in New York. We took out a second mortgage to help. Samuel grumbled, but when she walked that graduation stage in a cap she'd sewn rhinestones onto, he clapped louder than anybody in that auditorium. Time, that sneaky thing, did what it does. Samuel's heart stopped one cold November night while he was watching a game. Just didn't start again. 1 minute he was complaining about the refs. The next minute, I was alone in a house that suddenly felt 3 sizes too big. I swear the air got heavier. His chair by the window stayed empty. His coffee mug kept staring at me from the sink. The refrigerator hummed too loud. Grief is a noise all by itself. Sabrina flew down for the funeral with a man I didn't know yet. Tall, beard to neat, voice like every corporate training video I've ever been forced to hear. "Greg," he said, shaking my hand like he was sealing a deal. They stayed for days. It was a blur of casseroles and church folks and paperwork. Sabrina slept in her old room, but she never really settled, always on her phone, always talking about launch timelines and brand partnerships. On the last night, she sat at the kitchen table, swirling cheap red wine in one of my old mason jars. "Mama," she said, not quite looking at me, "you can't stay here forever." I smiled, thin and tired. "I'm not planning on living forever, baby." She rolled her eyes like she used to when she was 17 and the world was too slow for her. "You know what I mean. This neighborhood, it's changing. Property taxes are gonna climb. House is old, stairs, plumbing. You're one fall away from serious trouble." She wasn't wrong. That's the worst part. There's always that little grain of truth mixed in with the insult. She pulled out her tablet, tapped a few things, spun it around. Photos of glossy new houses, open floor plans, white kitchens that looked like nobody ever fried anything in them. "Greg and I've been looking at options," she said. "There's a development out in Westfield. Safe, quiet, good resale value." I was thinking. She paused, checking my face like a salesman reading a mark. "We could consolidate, sell this place, put the equity into something that works for all of us. A bigger home, room for us, room for you. You wouldn't be alone, and it'd give the business a stable base. Investors like that kind of thing." The business, she said that word like it was holy. Her online lifestyle boutique. Neutral candles that all smelled the same. Linen throws, hand-lettered signs, saying live, laugh, gather in languages she didn't speak. People loved it. Though, social media, man, folks will buy an empty jar if the pictures are pretty enough. I looked around my kitchen. The scratch on the counter where Sabrina dropped a pan when she was 8. The doorway with her height marked in pencil all the way up. Samuel's crooked shelf he promised to fix and never did. My whole life lived in those imperfections. I'm not some package you can just ship to a new address, I said quietly. She reached across the table, took my hand. Her nails were done in some fancy abstract pattern. Mama, listen, you'd have your own wing. Minimal stairs. Greg can help with bills. I'll be right there. We're family. This is us taking care of you. And the money from this place. It could be the difference between my business just surviving and really taking off. The way she said difference hooked me. I had spent my whole adult life being that difference. That extra shift. That coupon. That saved bill. It was my love language. Sacrifice. Let me think on it, I told her. I thought on it for 3 months. Long nights with Samuel's old calculator on the table and my reading glasses sliding down my nose. I met with a financial advisor at the bank who treated me like I'd wandered in from the gardening aisle by mistake. I talked to God out loud while stirring soup. I talked to Samuel's picture, like an old woman out of one of those sad indie movies. In the end, it came down to one image. Sabrina, at 5 years old, in overalls with jelly on her cheeks, holding up a crooked drawing of a house. This is us, she'd said. You and Daddy and me forever. I don't know, maybe I'm a fool, but I chose that drawing. I chose her. Again, so I sold the brick house. The realtor put one of those bright red under contract signs in front faster than I expected. Young couple bought it. They loved the vintage charm. I watched them walk through my living room, talking about knocking down walls, painting over history. I smiled and handed them the keys and didn't cry until I was back in my car. What Sabrina never fully understood was I had more than the house. Samuel and I had saved up over the years a little rental duplex on the east side. A tiny mobile home we'd fixed up and rented to a young couple with a baby. That was our cushion. Our if everything goes to hell money. I liquidated it all, signed papers with my hand shaking. Years of sacrifice turned into numbers on a screen. Then into a certified check I held like it might burn me. I handed that check to my daughter. She cried. Greg hugged me like I was an investor he'd charmed. You won't regret this, Lorraine, he said. We've got you. Famous last words. The new place was exactly what you'd imagine from people who say aesthetic white, everything. It looked like a magazine spread, not a home. My room guest suite. They called it was nice, though. Main floor, big window, private bath. Sabrina helped me hang Samuel's picture. We put my quilt at the foot of the bed. Like a small island of me in all that showroom neutrality. For a while, I let myself believe the story. I cooked too much. Out of habit. Pots of greens. Baked chicken. Cornbread. Sabrina would pick at it, say it was too heavy for their new lifestyle. Greg ordered meal kits with tiny sauce packets and instructions written like gospel. I watched them dance around tripods and ring lights, filming little videos in the living room. Hey fam, welcome back to They never looked my way unless they needed something ironed or a package signed for. Then the little cuts began. Mama, maybe don't leave your slippers in the hallway. They're on camera. Mama, could you turn the TV down? It messes up our sound levels. Mama, maybe don't sit in the background while we're shooting. People don't respond well to clutter. Clutter, that's what I'd become. The night they first mentioned the garage, it was raining. I remember, because the sound on the roof was the only thing keeping me from hearing the tightness in their voices. Greg had his laptop open, spreadsheets glowing on his face. We're maxed out, he said. If we're really gonna scale, we need more space. Inventories piling up, shipping materials everywhere. He glanced at my door. We need a dedicated fulfillment area. Sabrina chewed her lip. Mama's room is prime square footage, he finished. You said yourself, she goes to bed early. She doesn't need all that space. They waited until I was in the kitchen wiping the counters to bring it up. Mama, Sabrina said. That same sugar-coated tone she used when she wanted something big. We've been thinking. Business is exploding. Like, seriously, we can barely keep up. And Greg had an idea to convert your room into a full studio hub. Bigger backdrop, shelving, the whole thing. It would really legitimize us. Investors love to see that kind of professional setup. I kept wiping. And where would you like me to sleep, baby? On the coffee table. She laughed like I'd made a joke. Then she pointed her thumb toward the door leading to the garage. We cleaned up a space out there. It's cozy. We got you a new cot and everything. You said yourself you like it cool when you sleep. It's just temporary till we can find a better solution. Just for a season. Who told you that trick? I asked softly. The word temporary. It's doing a lot of work for you. Her smile tightened. Mama, don't make this dramatic. We're doing the best we can. You said you wanted to help. Well, this helps. I wish I could tell you I flipped that table over, that I told them both where to shove their linen napkins and brand deck, but I didn't. Grief and age and years of swallowing things that hurt had worn me thin. I just nodded, like some tired actress playing her same old role. The garage smelled like every garage you've ever been in: old paint, rubber, the faint temps of gasoline. Greg had pushed some boxes aside and laid out a fold-up cot. There was a little lamp, one thin blanket, and a plug-in heater still in its plastic. No rug, no chair, just concrete under my feet. I set Samuel's picture on an upturned plastic bin, sat down on the cot, the metal SQUEALED. Double quotes. Well, baby, I whispered to the photograph. Guess we're in the overflow now. The first night, I didn't sleep. Cars drove past every so often, headlights sliding under the door like ghosts. The house hummed above me. I heard Sabrina laughing at a TikTok, Greg's muffled voice on some Zoom call. I was so close and so far, all at once, like somebody had turned the volume down on my existence. Days ran together after that. Morning light would sneak under the garage door, casting a long stripe across my blanket. I'd shuffle into the house in the early hours, trying to make it to the bathroom before anyone saw me. Moving like a raccoon caught somewhere it didn't belong. My toothbrush lived in a little cup by the laundry sink. My clothes stayed folded in 2 milk crates. Neighbors came and went. Delivery trucks dropped off box after box, Sabrina's inventory growing while my space shrank. After a while, I noticed they started keeping the inner door locked more often for security. If I needed water, I had to knock. Imagine that, knocking to get a glass of water in the house your lifetime of work bought. One evening, they had people over. Influencers, investors, whoever. Fancy shoes clicked on hardwood. Laughter floated through the walls. I was halfway between a nap and a memory when I heard my name through the cracked garage window. So, your mom lives with you full-time? A woman's voice asked. Light, curious. Sabrina laughed, that new brittle laugh she'd picked up. Yeah, technically, she's sort of in the back now. It's fine. She's old school. Doesn't really vibe with the brand? Isn't that hard? The woman pressed. Having an elder at home, it's like having a very opinionated antique. Sabrina said, you love it, but it's heavy and it doesn't fit with anything. They all laughed. The words floated out into the night air, carried right through that cracked window, and settled right on my chest. Opinionated antique, relic, garage goblin, take your pick. Something in me shifted that night. It wasn't a lightning strike. It was more like a slow, quiet click, like a safe unlocking. A thought arrived and sat down next to me on that creaky cot. I am not just hurt, I am being used. And I know things. See, Sabrina forgot one important detail. I was the one who handled the paperwork at closing. While she was taking selfies in the model kitchen, I was reading clauses. The bank didn't like that all the cash was coming from an unsecured gift. Their underwriter wanted assurance. The easiest way, put my name on the title for now. The lawyer had said it, casual, like we were picking toppings on a pizza. We can always modify later, he'd said. Just sign here, Ms. Monroe. I signed, Samuel's calculator brain in my hand, the little light of self-preservation flickering even while grief tried to snuff it out. So while Sabrina was calling me a relic, I was a coner, a walking, breathing asterisk on her dream. She forgot. IDN. Single quotes. The cough came on slow. Dust, fumes. Too many cold nights wrapped in a thin blanket because I didn't want to rack up their electric bill with that little heater. At first it was just a clear your throat kind of thing. Then it turned into full-body shudders that left me clutching my ribs. Mama, you gotta stop dramatizing every sneeze, Sabrina said the day I asked if we could maybe reassess the sleeping arrangement. You've always been sensitive. Take some allergy pills. I tried to keep moving. Pride will make you walk even when you shouldn't. I'd stand too fast. The room would tilt. I'd grab the side of Greg's shiny car to steady myself. On the hottest days, the garage turned into a metal oven. I'd lie with a damp rag on my forehead, listening to the fan push hot air around and pretending it was helping. The day I dropped, the air felt thick like soup. I remember reaching for Samuel's picture to straighten it. Next thing I knew, I was staring at the underside of the workbench, and the world sounded far away. Someone was calling my name like it came from the bottom of a well. Then sirens. The harsh crack of the garage door being yanked up. Ma'am, can you hear me? Blink if you can hear me. I blinked. I saw a paramedic's face swim into view. Over his shoulder, Framed in the open doorway like some dark painting, stood Sabrina and Greg. She was in a matching lounge set, phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline she'd never drop. Her eyes were wide, not with fear for me, with fear for the scene, lights, neighbors, people watching. "Are you riding with us?" the medic asked her, already pushing my stretcher toward the ambulance. Yeah. She looked at Greg. He made that tight, corporate face, the one he used when talking about optics. "We'll follow in the car," he said. We need to secure the house." Secure the house. That's what I was now. A security risk. You ever ride in an ambulance alone? They got all that equipment, all those beeps and lines and oxygen, and still somehow, it's quiet in a way that gets loud inside your head. I watched ceiling lights flick past through the back window and thought, so this is what it feels like, to be cargo leaving your own life. Turns out it was pneumonia. Ugly kind. The doctor said the words exposure, allergens, air quality with that controlled irritation of a man who knows there's more to the story but has no time to fight it. They gave me fluids, antibiotics, oxygen. They wrote fall risk on a band on my wrist in big bold letters. Sabrina showed up hours later, with a bouquet that still had the supermarket price tag on it. She fussed over my blankets, patted my arm, spoke in this loud, performative voice, like she was auditioning for the role of concerned daughter on a medical drama. Nurses walked in and out. She waited until the curtain was mostly closed before she leaned in close. "Mama," she whispered, "what were you doing out there on the floor? Why didn't you tell us you were that sick? This is bad. Our neighbors saw, people are asking questions." I looked at her. Ellie looked. The contour, the mascara, the carefully undone hair, everything curated, even her panic. And something in me went very, very still. "I was trying not to be in the way," I said, "just like you asked." She flinched. Then she pulled back, lips pressing into a thin line. "Well, we're gonna have to adjust. Maybe get you into a facility, somewhere with staff. We can't be responsible if I closed my eyes. Not from fatigue, because if I kept them open, I might say something in that moment that would sound like begging. And I had officially retired from begging. When she left, I asked the nurse for the phone. Not myself, a hospital landline. Old school, harder to trace. I called a number I knew by heart but hadn't dialed in years. "Monroe Residence," a deep voice answered, then laughed. "Lord, listen to me acting fancy. It's just me. Andre, baby. It's Aunt Lorraine." He went quiet for half a second. "Auntie, you okay? You don't sound right." "I'm fine," I lied. "I'm in the hospital, but I'm fine. Listen, I need more than a visit. I need an attorney. That boy grew up in our church. His mama used to drop him at our house after choir practice. Samuel taught him how to sand wood. I taught him how to balance a checkbook. We helped with his first semester books when law school fees came due. When I make it," he'd said back then, "I got y'all." I told him we didn't need it. I was wrong. "What's going on?" he asked now, already shifting into professional mode. You can hear it in their voice, that little click. "I need you to pull the deed on Sabrina's place," I said, "the big white one out in Westfield. And I need you to bring whatever you find to me. Today." He did. Within hours, he was in that stiff hospital chair, manila folder in hand. Eyes scanning line after line. "Coners," he murmured. "Monroe, Lorraine and Monroe Hale, Sabrina, and Hale, Gregory." He flipped another page. "Gift affidavit, unsecured capital injection." Lord, he rubbed his jaw. They really thought they were slick. "I signed what they put in front of me," I said, "but I read it too." He looked up at me then, something fierce and protective sparking behind his eyes. "What happened, Auntie?" he asked softly, so I told him, not with tears, not like a victim, like a witness, concrete, step by step. The sale of my house, the extra properties, the check, the guest room turned studio, the garage, the cough, the fall, the ambulance, the fact that my daughter was Googling elder care facilities while my lungs were filling with fluid. When I finished, he sat back, exhaled hard, and shook his head. "They put you in the damn garage," he said, "and they did it in a house your money bought. Nah, that's not just morally foul. That's legally interesting." He spent the next hour explaining options, partition actions, forcing a sale, suing for elder abuse. I let him talk, then shook my head. "I don't want a war," I said. "I'm tired. I'm old. I don't want my last years burned up in courtrooms and depositions. I don't want to go on TV. I'm not trying to be a hashtag. I just want the math to make sense again." He smiled a little at that. You want the books balanced. Exactly. Quietly, if we can manage it. Loudly, if we must. We landed on something like a trick shot. A legal judo move that used their own greed against them. It involved 9 pages of dense language, 3 signatures, and one notary who looked like he'd seen some things and didn't want to see any more. In plain English, I agreed to sell them my share of the house. On paper, it looked like the ultimate olive branch. Old mom, finally stepping aside, making sure her baby has everything clean in her name. They'd get a notification from the county that title had been updated, 100% to Sabrina and Greg. They'd celebrate, maybe even post about it. We did it, fam. Home fully ours. But tucked inside that transfer was a very specific thing. A recorded agreement, acknowledged and notarized. That said, my proceeds from said sale would equal the original capital I'd put in plus a set return, payable upon demand if I was no longer residing in the property in safe and dignified conditions, comparable to the primary residence. Failure to pay would allow an immediate lien to be placed and the property to be subject to accelerated debt recovery. That's a mouthful, I said, pen hovering. It means, Andre translated, if they keep treating you like trash, you get to call the note, and the bank will do the rest. I signed. My hands were steady. They let me out of the hospital 3 days later. Sabrina picked me up alone. Greg had a meeting. She talked the whole drive, words running over themselves. We've been thinking, Mama, maybe that stint in the garage wasn't the best idea. Stress, you know, we're gonna put you back in the guest room. It's better for the brand if everything looks stable. People love family stories. Multi-generational living. We could even do a series about it. I watched suburban houses slide past the window. Perfect lawns. Identical mailboxes. Little kingdoms of curated life. Whatever you think is best, I murmured. Let her hear what she wanted to hear. The next month was calm on the surface. Calm like water over a sinkhole. I moved back into the guest room. They wheeled out racks and ring lights, left only my bed and a small dresser. I was an obstacle in their business flow now, but a necessary prop in their family narrative. Sabrina started filming little clips with me in the background. 3 generations of hustle. She'd caption a shot of me folding laundry. Comments poured in. Your mom is goals. Love how you take care of her. I'd sit there, lit by their soft boxes, feeling like an unpaid extra. What they didn't know was that while they were editing footage, Andre was editing their future. The lien paperwork went through. The bank logged it. Quiet entries in systems they would never think to look at. Meanwhile, an accountant friend of his took a general interest peek at Sabby Home's filings. Let's just say the numbers told a story that did not match. The story on Instagram that day it all came due was bright and mean. Sun too sharp. Sky too blue. I woke up knowing something was about to flip. It started with a letter from the bank. Thick envelope. Official logo. I watched Sabrina open it at the kitchen island. Her face went from casual to confused to tight in 3 seconds flat. What is this? She asked, waving the pages like they were rude. That, I said, sipping my tea. Is the bank letting you know there's a lien on the house for the full amount of what I invested? Seems the cojoner you stuck in the garage decided her living conditions did not meet the agreed upon standard. She stared at me like she'd never seen me before. You did this. No, baby, I said softly. You did. I just signed the paperwork. She called Greg. He came storming in from the office. Hair mussed for once, tie crooked. They paced, cursed, called it insane, unfair, elder confusion. Then they called Andre. I listened to my godson tell them, in his calm lawyer voice, that everything had been explained, recorded, notarized, that they had 30 days to pay or restructure, that the bank already skittish because of some questions raised about their business books was unlikely to play nice. It didn't stop there. The anonymous complaint about their business commingled funds. Unpermitted warehouse activity in a residential zone landed about a week later. A man with a clipboard and a badge showed up, asked to see their storage, their permits. Sabrina's face went gray. Greg's forehead broke out in sweat. Cameras weren't rolling that day. I didn't gloat, didn't dance. I made myself small, a quiet old woman in a faded house dress, moving between kettle and window, watching the dominoes fall. When the foreclosure notice came, it was loud. Bright paper slapped on the front door with tape that sounded like a gunshot. Neighbors slowed down when they walked their dogs. Their little empire, so carefully staged, so painfully curated, now had an ugly orange scar right on its face. They tried everything. Called the bank, called Greg's buddy in lending, called a pastor to pray, called me into the living room, like a defendant. Mama, please, Sabrina said, mascara smudged, voice raw. We can fix this. We'll move you back in. We'll make your room nice again. We'll do better. Just revoke whatever you did. You can't leave us out here like this. I looked at my child, my only baby, the girl whose scraped knees I used to bandage, whose nightmares I soothed with lullabies and stories. I saw panic, yes, but underneath, I saw something else, the same entitlement that had allowed her to tuck me into a garage without losing sleep. If I stop this, I asked quietly, will you treat me different because you see my worth, or because you need my money? She didn't answer, didn't have to. I love you, I told her. That's never been up for debate. But love and access are not the same thing. Your daddy and I worked too hard, for too long, for me to die knowing I taught you that your comfort matters more than my dignity. Greg tried to jump in with legal threats. I let him talk himself breathless. Then I reached for my walker. Yeah, I've got one now. Don't laugh. Anne stood up. I'm tired, I said. Tired in my bones. Y'all figure out how to live without my sacrifice. I already had to learn how to live without your kindness. I left that house for the last time on a Tuesday. I had one suitcase, my Bible, Samuel's picture, and a bag of peppermint candies. Andre picked me up, put my things in his trunk like they were treasure. He drove me not to some dingy nursing home, but to a small assisted living place he'd found. Simple, clean, run by women who called me Miss Lorraine and meant it with respect, not pity. My room here is not big, but it's mine. 2 windows, a chair by the radiator where the sun falls just right in the afternoon. I've got a little bookshelf with my favorite dog-eared mysteries, a quilt that smells faintly of home, and a plant I'm trying very hard not to kill. The staff knock before they come in. Do you hear me? They knock. That alone feels like wealth. People always think nursing homes, or whatever fancy name they use now, are where you stick the forgotten. And don't get me wrong, there's sadness here. There are folks whose families really did disappear for good. But there's also something else. A strange, quiet freedom. No one here expects me to be an investor, a babysitter, a backdrop. I'm just Lorraine. I go to bingo when my joints allow it. I sit in the lounge and judge the contestants on those singing shows. I hold other old ladies' hands when they talk about husbands long gone and kids who don't call. We make a little choir of ghosts and laughter. Sabrina didn't visit at first. Pride kept her away. Or shame. Or both. I heard through the grapevine from a cousin's friend's neighbor, you know how news travels, that they lost the house. That Greg dipped, not long after, took a job in another state. Left her with a storage unit full of broken product and debt notices. Months went by. Seasons changed. The tree outside my window went from green to gold, to bare, and back again. One autumn afternoon, when the sky had that soft gray that makes everything feel like an old photograph, there was a knock on my door that didn't sound like staff. Come in, I said, heart already stuttering. She stepped in slow, no makeup, hair shoved back in a messy ponytail. Clothes looked expensive once, now tired. For the first time in years, she looked like my girl. Not the brand, not the persona, just Sabrina. Eyes red, hands twisting the strap of her purse. Hey mama, she said. I took her in, head to toe. She looked smaller somehow. Or maybe I finally saw her without the pretty lights. Hey baby, I answered. She stood there a moment, looking at my little room. The photo of Samuel, the plant, the walker, the crochet blanket one of the nurse's granddaughters made me. Then her eyes filled and the dam broke. She slid onto the chair opposite my bed and put her face in her hands. I messed up, she said, words muffled. I messed up so bad. I know, I said. No use pretending otherwise. Truth was already in the room. They took everything. She went on. The house, the business, our savings. Greg, she stopped, swallowed hard. He said he couldn't handle the stress. So he left. Says he'll circle back when he's settled. Whatever that means. I didn't comment. Men like Greg always think life is a conference call. I was so mad at you, she said, looking up finally. I told people you'd lost it, that some lawyer manipulated you. I said you were ungrateful. I said you ruined my life. She laughed then, a short, humorless sound. But you didn't. I did, long before any papers got signed. We sat in the quiet hum of the radiator and hallway chatter for a long time. She fiddled with the visitor tag on her shirt. I watched the way her shoulders started to slump under the weight of realizing her narrative had holes. Why are you here? I asked gently. She blinked, like the question caught her off guard. Because, she stopped, started again. Because you're the only person who ever told me no and meant it. And the only person who ever still loved me afterward. I felt something in my chest ache and loosen at the same time. Old love never really dies. It just goes underground to protect itself. You called me a relic, I reminded her. You stuck me in that garage like a box of Christmas decorations you'd deal with later. She flinched. Tears spilled. I know. God. I know. And I can't even say I didn't mean it in the moment. I was so wrapped up in trying to look like I had it together that I treated you like evidence I didn't. You made sacrifices I never even properly looked at. You liked the story where you did it all yourself, I said. Made it from scratch. No one wants to talk about the old lady behind the curtain signing checks. She nodded, biting her lip. Do you hate me? I thought about that. Really thought, hate is loud, heavy, it takes energy. I don't have that kind of energy anymore. I got my little plant to worry about. My niece, the ladies down the hall who need someone to listen. No, I said finally. I don't hate you, but I don't trust you the way I used to. Those are two different things. Took me a long time to learn that. She let that sit. Then she said something so soft I barely caught it. I'm pregnant. The word hung in the air like a bell. I looked at her stomach, still flat under that oversized sweater, then back at her face. Does he know? I asked. She shook her head. He left before I found out. I was going to tell him. Then, the foreclosure, the yelling, the lawyers. I couldn't. She pressed her hand to her belly, almost without realizing. I keep thinking, what kind of mother am I gonna be, when I did what I did to mine? There it was. The real question. Not about money. Not about houses. About legacy. About the echo our choices make. I shifted in my chair, bones complaining. You're at a crossroads, I told her. You can raise that baby in the same pattern you fell into with me, or you can break it. Patterns don't break themselves. People do. How? She whispered. Because I clearly don't know what I'm doing. You start by telling the truth, I said. To yourself first, then to that child, when they're old enough to understand. You tell them their grandma once slept in a garage so their mama could play boss in a house she didn't really own. You tell them that grandma finally remembered her own worth and pulled the plug. You tell them it hurt everybody, but it was the only way to stop the bleeding. She winced. That's harsh. It's real, I said. Love without truth is just decoration, baby. And you should know by now, decor don't hold up when the foundation's cracked. She laughed through her tears. You and these metaphors. Old English teacher in another life, I said, waving a hand. In my head, anyway. We talked until my voice got rough. About practical things. About low-income housing lists. About jobs that don't require a ring light. About church programs she used to side-eye when she thought she was above them. I didn't offer her money. I don't have much left beyond what keeps me here and comfortable. What I did offer was something thinner but stronger. A line she could grab if she decided to climb out of the hole. When visiting hours ended, she stood up. Her eyes were swollen, her face blotchy, but some of the sharp brittle layer had melted. She looked tired. Human mind. Can I come again? She asked, voice small. Yes, I said, but not to talk me into fixing your messes. Those days are done. You come to see me because I'm your mama and you want to sit with me. Otherwise, no need to waste gas. She nodded. I can do that. At the door, she turned. Mama? Yeah, baby. Did you ever feel bad watching me lose everything? I let my eyes drift to the window. The sun was sliding down, painting the sky in streaks of gold and purple. Some birds were fussing in the tree. The world was doing what it always does, moving on. I felt sad, I said. Still do, sometimes. Not because you lost things. Things can be replaced. I felt sad because I watched you learn the hard way what you refused to learn the easy way. I prayed you'd never put someone in the kind of position you put me in. But you did. So the universe, God, whatever name you like, showed you what it looks like from the other side. She absorbed that. Feels awful, she murmured. Good, I said gently. Maybe you'll remember. After she left, the room got quiet again. I eased back into my chair, pulled Samuel's picture onto my lap. Well, old man, I said, tracing his smile with a fingertip, we really did a number on ourselves with that one, huh? The thing about getting old is people start talking about you like you're a chapter that's already been read. A lesson, a cautionary tale. Don't let this happen to you. They say, sharing memes about elder abuse and inheritance drama, but living through it doesn't feel like a morality play. It feels like a series of small, daily choices that add up to a cliff you didn't realize you were walking toward. If you're still listening to me ramble wherever you are, whatever time it is, I want to leave you with this. From one tired heart to another. Love is not supposed to make you disappear. Not as a parent, not as a partner, not as a friend. If the only time people remember you exist is when they need you to sign something, babysit, or stay quiet so their life looks good on camera, that's not love. That's usage with a pretty filter. You can care for people and still say, this is as far as you can go with my spirit. You can give and then one day decide, that's enough. The rest is mine. You can love your child with every ache in your bones and still tell them no when their hand comes out. Not to hold yours, but to take what you can't afford to lose. I used to think a good mother gave until there was nothing left. Now I know a wise mother leaves something behind for herself. A soft chair. A window. A little plant she tries not to kill. A name on a lease that means she won't be moved like furniture. They called me a relic. Maybe I am. An old piece from another time. But relics aren't trash. They're evidence. Proof that something real existed before the plastic versions took over. When the dust settles, people go back to the artifacts to remember what mattered. So when my story gets told, the short versions, the gossip, the YouTube titles, somebody will say, that's the lady whose own child put her in the garage. And I suppose that's true. But I hope, if you were paying attention, you'll remember the rest of it too. I'm also the woman who read the fine print, who kept her name on the line, who walked out with her back a little bent but her dignity standing straight, who sat in a small sunny room, breathing free air, and finally said, I am not a prop, I am a person, and that is worth more than any house on any pretty street. And if you ever find yourself standing at some metaphorical garage door, holding your pillow in one hand and your pride in the other, wondering if this is all you're worth, baby, listen to an old woman who's been there. You are not overflow. You are not background. You are not an antique gathering dust in someone else's story. You're the whole damn heirloom. Act like it.